Good morning and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ian, known as WanderBeard around these parts. And in today's video, we are in the historic city of León, Nicaragua. The origins of the Nicaraguan revolution in the 60s and 70s, which we're going to look at a little bit today. Beautiful city, lots of history here, and really looking forward to showing you a little bit of it today. Just making my way down here towards the Central Park, Central Square area. Another hot, sunny day here today. So let's get wandering. So we've made our way down here to the main square in León, what's known as the Park of Liberation. Juan Jose Quezada is the guy's name, and it's a really fascinating place. So there's lots of history here. The big basilica is in front of us. We're actually going to go up and take a look. You can go up on top of the roof and have a look up there and around the whole area. And then there's also a museum of the revolution just over here behind me, which I thought would be really interesting considering where we are in Nicaragua and the history that's here. But first, let's see if we can get up to the roof and have a look around at the whole city. So just a quick look inside here. This is the Cathedral of the Assumption of Mary. It was groundbroken in the 1760s and completed in the early 1800s, and is now a World Heritage Site on the UNESCO list. And it is a massive building. We're going to go over this way and see if we can take a hike up to the roof and have a look around. So to get up to the roof, you have to go to the front of the cathedral out here. Apparently there's a ticket office somewhere to buy the ticket first. And then once I get that, I can return to here to go upstairs. So let's go figure that out. So mission accomplished. So I got my ticket with 145 Cordobas. You come to this little hole in the wall here, which doesn't look like much, but it's just around the back side here, across the street from, well, there you can see. So you come here, get your ticket, and then you head around the left-hand side of the cathedral here, and the entrance is over here. So let's head over this way now and head up to the top. So I had to leave my microphone downstairs, but that's okay because there's a microphone on this anyway. First look at the square. The stairs are very narrow. Anyway, let's keep going. We'll get up to the top. Whew. It is bright up here. So welcome to the rooftop of the basilica. You have to take off your shoes. So make sure you have socks on, or your feet will roast. But I believe down this backside here, we can get a look at the volcanoes that encircle the city. So there's a shot of part of the city there. You can see the volcanoes back in the distance through the haze. It is hot and hazy here today, for sure. And this is a shot from where I'm standing on the roof. Beautiful building, and a really pretty view of the city. So while I'm up here, I thought I'd give a little quick explanation on some of the history of Nicaragua and León's part in that. I'm not going to go through the whole history because that would take too long, and if you want to read up on it, there are lots of resources online. So the US maintained a strong interest here in Nicaragua for decades, and in the 1930s installed a president Zaragoza and his family were in power here for 60-ish years. They were a brutal regime who imprisoned people, who embezzled all of the money from the country. And then in the 70s, there was a massive earthquake that actually flattened the capital of Managua. After that earthquake, it was found that the family that was in power had embezzled most of the aid money for themselves or for their friends. And so it was sort of the final cracks in the support for that family who had controlled the country for so many decades. Backing up a little bit, in the 60s, there was a separatist revolutionary movement called the Sandinistas, which I'm sure you've heard of if you know any of the history at all. They fought the government in the 60s and 70s to overthrow them so that the revolutionary Sandinistas could take power. In 1979, finally, the Sandinistas won the battle. The president fled the country to Miami, where he had been supported for decades by the US government and by the National Guard, which was a police force that was installed by the US government as well. Flash forward to shortly after that, then, of course, the US launches the Contras, which were meant to oppose the Sandinistas who were now in power. And throughout the 80s, those two battled here in Nicaragua as a proxy war for the American fight against communism. After the 1979 revolution and the Sandinistas took control, it was initially a group effort between several parties as a coalition, and then eventually what is now known today as the FSLN, or it's basically what remains of the original Sandinistas group, has remained in power up to today. The president of the FSLN is Daniel Ortega. He was one of the original members from 1960s when the group was first founded. There are many discussions to be had about the FSLN here in Nicaragua, the positives and negatives. Obviously, the US fought very hard against the left-wing communist Sandinista movement for decades. There was, a whole mess with the US government and Ronald Reagan and George Bush and all sorts of others. But in the end, the FSLN has remained in power. So, without going into opinions on the party in power or the history of Nicaragua, I thought it would be very interesting to go over and check out the museum that's here. They have a museum that documents the history of the revolution. So let's head over there next. It's just across the square here from the Basilica. And as you can see, the view from up here is pretty incredible. So we've just come down again to the square here. Again, the Basilica is behind me. There's a Catholic school building here on the left. The Museum of the Revolution is actually in that back corner. But there's a monument I want to go check out over this side first. We'll take a walk across the main square here as we go. It is super hot today. So here in front of me is a significant spot here in the city of León and in the history of Nicaragua. This is the memorial for the students who died in protest in 1959 against the then authoritarian government. These 4 students, and there's a 5th one that's been added since, These were students who fought against the government and were massacred. And this was sort of the beginning of the Sandinista movement in the 60s as a result of these protests and the deaths of these students. And so now what they've added to it since then is they have what's called the Avenue of the students here. And there are memorials all along this street that continue all the way up that way. And they talk about all the different people who fought for the Sandinista revolution, who died at the hands of the government, and continue to be memorialized to this day. I would say there's probably 50 to 100 different student memorial signs. And you can see here's some examples here of some of those. I just wanted to come over and have a look at this before we head down to the Revolutionary Museum, which is just at the end of this street. We are also in the heart of the FSLN territory. This is their municipal building, their government building, if you will. You can see their flags are everywhere here, the FSLN. The red and black flag is actually sort of a takeoff of the original flag that the original Sandinista movement in the 30s against the Americans was based on that. It was a red and black flag with the Jolly Roger. But it's a good reminder that here's an example here, Lorena Barcenas, who was just 14 when she died. So we are just up here on the roof of the Revolutionary Museum, and we just got a bit of a tour, and I'm going to go downstairs after we finish up here again to kind of give you an overview of what's inside. Fantastic tour here, by the way, available both in English and Spanish. I didn't bother recording the actual tour because it was back and forth and there's a big group of people up here, but lots of information, really, really interesting. So this building here was built in the 1930s originally, and was used originally as a telecommunications building. And then in the 50s, the National Guard actually used this building as a lookoff point. This was also one of the first buildings that the Sandinistas took over in the city. As I mentioned earlier, León was the first city that they captured, and is now the museum here for the revolution full-time. It's been this way now since the 90s. Beautiful building. It's very untouched in that when you walk through it, and we'll take a walk down through here in a minute, you can see how the building has basically been left intact from how it looked in the 1950s and 60s. But this building is really cool. It overlooks the main square. So there's the cathedral that we were on the roof of earlier. There's the local office for the FSLN. This is that Catholic school we talked about earlier, and then of course the main square down here. So we're going to take a walk back down through the building and have a look around, and I'll kind of explain what's down on the first floor. But it's a pretty cool spot. It was 100 Cordoba at the door to get in, but that included the tour and everything, so it's well worth your money to come and check it out. So he was saying that this building has been the Museum of the Revolution since 1982, but throughout the 90s it was also doubled as a school for a while. And then finally at the end of the 90s it stopped being a school, and so now the museum is downstairs, and now they're working on doing some restoration for the rest of the building to bring it back. Because it is a beautiful old building with these old columns and the stairwell and stuff. Pretty amazing place. Here's one of the old classrooms that would have been used here up until the 90s. You can see the blackboard here on the wall. So this is the main room of the tour that we went through earlier. That was really cool. Really recommend coming and listening to the stories, because obviously the photos alone don't do the whole story justice. and I certainly won't do it any justice, but just kind of give you a very brief review. So this goes back to the 50s when the Somoza family was in power, funded by the US government in order to maintain a hold on the country after many, many decades. The Somozas were very brutal. They imprisoned many political prisoners, many oppositions to the family, those types of things. The US also funded the National Guard, it was called, which was basically the military police in the country, and they would be used to crack down on all of the people. So in 1956, the student protests began. In 1959, there were the 4 students that were murdered, and the rest of these photos, some of these are probably pretty grisly, so I'm going to try and stand back from them a little bit. But there was a movement, obviously, in the 60s, through to the 70s, when the Sandinistas formed, grew in power, and then fought for the freedom for the country. In 1979, they finally took over from the Somoza family. In 1978, the city was actually bombed. The city of León was actually bombed by the government in an effort to quell some of the Sandinista movements, which only, of course, emboldened the movement as a whole. So this is a really fascinating place with lots of history here, obviously. Going up through this building and looking at all the different uses of it over the years was really interesting. There's so much to learn about this history here in Nicaragua, and it continues today. I mean, essentially the same group that spawned off from the original Sandinista movement is still in power today here in 2025. So you're talking, 40 to 50 years of history here. And this is all fairly recent in the grand scheme of things. That still obviously affects the country here today. There's some murals in the back here talking about the different liberators of Latin America, and then within the FSLN themselves, and then there's also a list over there of some of the people who died fighting for the revolution. It's a pretty impressive mural in the back of the building here. This third mural over here that I walked over to because the print was smaller, these are all the people who died fighting here in León, the different zones, 1, 2, 3, and 4 across the city. This second room here actually has a history of the Sandinos fight against the Americans starting back in 1933. As I mentioned earlier, Sandino was the man who initially came up with their red and black flag with the Jolly Roger on it. That was later incorporated by the Sandinistas and the FSLN here in Nicaragua. And so it talks about the process of exploitation by imperialists throughout Central America and the Caribbean, and then the fight that ensued over the next decades against those types of organizations. There's a picture here, a map, that goes through all of the different fights of General Sandino in 1931 and 1932. And like you can see here is Nicaragua in total. There's Costa Rica's down here and Honduras up top. So you can see that there was a large number of different fights that were involved here over the years. So after more than 2 years of fighting the imperialist fight, in 1934, Sandino was returning to his home and was arrested and then later executed by those in power in the country at the time. Shortly thereafter, of course, is when the Somoza power took over the country with the Americans, installed their new president, and then ran the country for the next 65 years. So once again, my little tour here of this museum will never do it justice. I recommend that if you are coming here to León, and regardless of your reasons for coming here, if you're coming here to party or to surf down some mountains, make sure that you at least come here and understand some of the history in this country and where it originates from and some of the reasons for it. I think it's a really interesting place to understand some of that stuff. And I know that a lot of people who will watch this video weren't even born in the 60s and 70s. I was around, I was born in 74, so while I didn't understand a lot of what was going on at the time, of course, because I was certainly too young, I think that it gave me a better attachment to come here and learn more about it today, and I feel like I've done that. And so I highly recommend that if you are in León, make sure you come to this Museum of the Revolution. So, let's go grab some lunch and then head back to my place, and I will show you where I have been staying here in León, which I think has been a fantastic deal. Let's go check it out. So I thought I would give you a quick room review where I stayed here in León, Nicaragua. This is Hosta Harvest House. It is a privately run Airbnb, shared accommodations, whatever you want to call it, hotel, I guess is another word for it. And there are about 20 spaces here. There are shared accommodations, there are private accommodations, there are accommodations with just a fan, and some with air conditioner. So this is the room that I had for the last few nights. Bed was super comfortable. It has a nice foam topper on it, so it was great for sleeping. Really good cold air conditioner up on the wall. If you're coming to León, I would strongly recommend getting a room with air conditioning, because it does get very hot here, and even at nighttime, you don't want to be sweating kind of all night. So yeah, it's a nice double-sized bed, a great rack for luggage and clothes and stuff. I had a nice little work desk here with a comfortable chair and table. And then in here was the private bathroom, all the usual stuff. No hot water, but believe me when I say this, you do not need hot water showers in Nicaragua. So other than that, Wi-Fi here was good. I would say I'm in room 17, which is at the far end, so it was a little weak in the room, but generally speaking was fine. Out here, on top of all this, there's also a little patio area here where you get a table and a couple of chairs for each room. And when you sit out here, you get a real nice breeze in the shade. So it's a great way to, pass the time, read a book, do some work, whatever you need. There's also 2 or 3 cats that live here. There's one sneaking by down there under the plants. Super friendly. They've been hanging around with me off and on while I've been here, and it's been great. The place also has a shared kitchen space with all the stuff in it, so if you want to cook your meals instead of ordering in food or going out for food, that is certainly an option here. There is fresh water available down on the first floor for free too, and I have to say that the staff here have been really wonderful, very friendly, very helpful. I was asking for information about how to get to León Viejo the other day, and they were great with that information and everything else that I've needed. So anyway, a big thumbs up for me. This place was fantastic. The staff here, as I said, were awesome. The rooms are really comfortable, and being this far back off the road, it's really quiet here at night. So it's been fantastic all around. Highly recommend it. If you're looking to get out of the sort of downtown, backpacker hostel scene where it's much more of a party environment and you're looking for a quiet place to sleep for a few nights, this is the place to be. I'll put the contact information and the price I paid here on the screen, and I thought it was a really great deal. There were options in the city. Obviously there's much more expensive, there's also much cheaper, but I felt this was a good middle ground for me. It was exactly what I was looking for a few nights, so good job. So that's going to do it for here in León, Nicaragua, my first stop in this new country. I had a really fun couple days here, checking out the city, checking out the ruins of the old city, and learned a lot, which was really good. So I'm off to my next destination today, and looking forward to that as well, and continuing my exploration through Nicaragua. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please leave a like or a comment down below to let me know that you were here. If this is your first time coming across my channel, feel free to subscribe. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, but I really appreciate it. If you'd like to support me further, There's a few different ways you can do that. Firstly, I have some memberships set up here through YouTube. There are 3 different tiers starting at just $3 Canadian per month. If you would like to support me one time, there are some links below for Bitcoin and PayPal donations. You don't have to do that, but I always appreciate it. And remember, life is short. Wander. And I'll see you in the next video.